Hello and welcome. Thanks for your patience. We have electricity back, and good afternoon to all of you. It is an honor to have so many interested students in our last panel discussion of today, and I would greet all of our distinguished guests here in the first rows and in the back. Hi again. It's nice to have you. And it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to our roundtable discussion on negotiation techniques in bilateral and multilateral relations. Today, we are really honored to have with us two esteemed experts to discuss this topic in a short 45 minutes. Here on my left, Dr. Paul Meerts, an international negotiations analyst, political scientist. He is the co-founder of the Clingendale Institute, the Netherlands Institute of International Relations, and he has been director of the Department of Training and Education at the Institute, and also later on, Deputy General Director. Paul Meerts is a well-known international scholar who has helped the training and education of diplomats in dozens of countries, especially here in our region. Therefore, he holds the Order of Merit from Austria and Romania, as far as I know, and he's also involved in the training programs of the Hungarian Diplomatic Academy, and he will deliver tomorrow and on Saturday lectures to our students at the Diplomatic Academy, and we're very happy to have you here, Paul. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And on my right, maybe you know him a little bit more because you have seen him already in classes here at the university, our ambassador Ferenc Robák, who has also served as head of protocol, and he is now the professor of international relations here at our Faculty of Public Governance and International Studies. He was the former consul of Algeria, ambassador to Tunisia, later on to Brussels, where he also served as head of the Hungarian permanent representation to the Council of Europe. and he headed the protocol department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for several terms of office. And last but not least, he also served as government commissioner for the organization during the first Hungarian EU presidency back 10 years ago. And maybe, as you know, my name is Péter Zachar, and I'm here as the moderator of this event and the Vice Dean for International Affairs here at our faculty. Our discussion will delve into the intricacies of negotiation strategies that can lead to successful outcomes in both bilateral and multilateral contexts. We will explore the factors that contribute to the success of interstate negotiations with a particular focus on the ongoing conflicts in our world, and we try to examine the impact of leadership styles on negotiations, including the distinctive approach exemplified by the new style of President Trump. As we navigate these complex topics, we hope to give you some deeper insights, and we hope that we can somehow enlarge oral knowledge in these questions. So without further ado, and after this very short introduction, let's go to the first question. And Paul, I would like to raise it first to you. How do negotiation techniques differ between bilateral and multilateral settings? Can you share maybe some specific strategies that have proven effective in these contexts?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me here. Is there really a difference as far as techniques are concerned between bilateral and multilateral? Actually, I don't think so. Negotiation is negotiation. Of course, multilateral negotiation is managing complexity, as Professor Zartman always says. So there you need procedures. There you have a different style of operating, but within the multilateral negotiation, it's a lot of bilaterals. But because you know that to negotiate openly normally doesn't work, you need back channels, and back channels are in the corridors of the multilateral negotiation process as well. I think in general you can say that bilateral negotiation is more transparent, can be more transparent, but at the same time the problem is if you have Mr. Trump and you have the present Prime Minister of Canada, for example, or Zelensky, you know, if this is a kind of bilateral talk, which it was with Vance intervening, then you have no escape. You are there in front of the media, etc. You have no escape. Well, in multilateral negotiation, there are so many actors, there's so many opportunities, there's so many issues, that it's not only possible to reach some kind of conclusion, although it will be watered down, although there is something like a kind of way to have a vague agreement, constructive ambiguity, as the Brits say. All right, so there are more opportunities, I think, in multilateral bargaining than in bilateral bargaining, but of course it takes much more time. It was fascinating to me, but then I'll stop, what happened in Baku in the last climate conference. The Azerbaijanis thought that if the conference is over, that the conference is over. Well, you know, the conference starts at the moment that the conference is over, because under pressure, everything gets fluent. And so there was no coffee anymore, nothing to eat anymore. They didn't understand that this is how the real bargaining works. The French, the same subject, climate change, 2 years before the Paris conference, or even more, French diplomats went to all the headquarters of all the ministries of all the countries to understand what do they want, what are their wishes, what are their interests. And so they worked for 2 years on it. And then you had the conference in Paris. The most important things in multilateral, I think, are those things you don't see.
Yes, I totally agree that the bilateral relationship is and bilateral negotiations are much simpler than the multilateral negotiations. I worked about 30 years in bilateral relationship. I have been Tunisia, Algeria, and head of department of South European countries, included Holy See. So, for example, I conducted the negotiations between the Hungarian state and the Vatican state about a very delicate topic. You know, the financement of the Hungarian church, Hungarian Catholic Church. There is a total separation of the state and the church, but there is a need to finance the Hungarian Catholic Church. And we found this solution because it was in the picture only two states. And there wasn't disturbed but the other circumstances. So we had a solution because in Hungary, you know, after the changes of the regime, the government wanted to return all the state, all the building of the church, but it wasn't possible because the time, 40 years is too much to return all these state buildings. So in exchange of this building, we created a capital, and of course the taxes, the income of this capital will come to the church, and the state doesn't support the church religion life. So you can have a solution quite easily. Even I have been in a very delicate situation when, you know, I have been chief of protocol in this time, and the chief of protocol in this time, meaning that it was the chief of protocol, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also for the president and the prime minister. Today is not the case, but in this time it was the case. And we had a president, President Sólyom. He was very sensible for the question of national minority in Slovakia. He had an invitation to other side of the border to an inauguration statue of the King Stefan, and he wanted to be there. But the Slovakian government said that there's no way because you are president and for the internal order is not a good question. But the president decided to transfer even the border by the bridge on the Danube. And the half of the bridge the guarder of the border, said that no way, today, the Hungarian president is now a persona non grata. So he returned. It was a really big conflict. But the politicians didn't want to create a big political problem. And they pushed the question to the chief of protocols. And the Slovakian partner said me that, okay, you have a mistake because a president has the right to have a trip without invitation. And I said, no, not in this way. I left this context, and I proposed that this is a protocol question, a professional question. What is this meaning, a private visit? About Hungary, it's a real private visit. About you, it's an official visit. So we can have a press declaration that two parties agreed that we should work at this question and in the future harmonize our protocol rules inside of European Union context. So it was the solution, the problem solved. So a bilateral solution is much easier than a multilateral negotiation when there is a lot of country, a lot of interest, a lot of allies. So you should always have an ally in a multinational context. Alone, you can never
Small countries like Netherlands and Hungary, we need multilaterals because there we can find our allies, but also our enemies, of course. But as a specialist on protocol, Mr. Chair, if I may ask you, what went wrong between Trump and Zelensky and Vance? If you look at protocol, I mean, this is something that we never really saw. There have been these kind of situations, I know, for example, between Napoleon Bonaparte and the most famous negotiator of all of them, Talleyrand. But this was on television and so on. This was not according to any protocol. How do you look at that scene between Trump and Zelensky on television?
You know, I think that it was part of the Trump policy. He came from the real estate business, and I passed 9 years in Arabic countries. So for me, it's a familiar behavior that you should ask much more than the real price. And after that, you will touch something. And this was the same thing. Another way, I think Trump had the intention to have negotiation with Putin and not Ukraine. And he had the intention to eliminate Zelensky from the negotiation. And you know, even it was a protocol question he started. Oh, how elegant are you in the White House, he said. And it wasn't, I think, an accident, but even a press friend of Trump, first he asked, it's a shame you are dressed in this way in the White House without tie, and this is you are not respecting the White House. Elon Musk respected, of course, because the T-shirt and with the children very well, and even it was a real action against Zelensky, because before, when we had the inauguration of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, it had been a trilateral meeting between among the Macron, Trump, and Zelensky. And Zelensky had been dressed the same way, and Trump hadn't had any problem. Even the Pope and Charles King said, "Oh, you are dressed as the pilot." Oh, it's an honor, because in England all kings are pilots, and in Ukrainian all pilots are king, he said. Charles. This dress, this military dress, is very normal. Even Churchill had dressed in this way during the war. So it's a very normal thing, but it was something you can attack the Zelensky and eliminate from the negotiation, and only to have only one partner, Putin, because Putin impressioned very strongly Trump, because he is a strong man, strong country as United States, so partner to partner. So I think this was the tactic of the Trump to eliminate Zelensky from this negotiation process.
I think we have seen that already in the first presidency of Trump. Maybe you remember his meeting with the president of Serbia at that time. Vučić was invited to the White House, and President Trump was sitting behind his huge table in his office in a huge chair, and Vučić was seated into a table like this one in a small chair, and Trump was talking to him downwards in his first meeting with him.
Yeah,
so
even it was a scandal because Maria Zakharova, spokeswoman of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, posted at the Facebook this photo of Vučić, humiliated by Trump, and posted another photo about Sharon Stone, the actress of The Basic Instinct, with a very short skirt, so but long leg. And he proposed to Vučić to use the same behavior than Sharon Stone. Perhaps he can impression Trump. And after that, after 1 week, Putin apologized officially that Maria Zakharova, it's a mistake. No, Vučić is our friend.
Well, one more thing. There's a very interesting example of this in history. So at a certain moment, Talleyrand, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Napoleon Bonaparte, and Napoleon was very angry at Talleyrand because Talleyrand, behind his back, was working with Metternich and Tsar Alexander, etc. And then Napoleon starts to shout at Talleyrand, where all the ministers are there. So in public, what happened to Zelensky? But Talleyrand did something else. He did not respond. He did not even blink. He just stared at Napoleon. He was a black hole. And Napoleon got more angry and more angry and more angry. And Talleyrand didn't move at all. That's another way to deal with the issue.
Maybe we have to learn something from these negotiation new style, and maybe the future diplomats have to draw lessons from that, and we have to put it into our protocol books for the future, how to discuss in the future with American diplomats. But one other question that I would like to raise is cultural sensitivity. Is there something that can influence negotiations in a way, differences between cultures? Is there a way that can help to build trust, or these differences maybe can hinder agreements? How do you see that, Paul?
Trust is, of course, vital in negotiation. And people can trust each other. Look at Mitterrand and Chancellor Kohl, for example. And that works. But I think countries cannot trust each other. That's another dimension. What countries can do is to control each other. That's actually what the European Union is doing. It's controlling up to a certain level, both Hungary, the Netherlands, and so on. But trust between people, yes, but between countries, that's much more difficult. So, how to deal with culture? I think culture is much more an obstacle in business negotiation than it is in diplomatic negotiation. Because in diplomatic negotiation, we have diplomatic rules, we have diplomatic norms, we have the protocol, and so on. So you have a kind of overarching diplomatic culture that helps us to relate to each other, right? So in that sense, I think there is a kind of moderating power there. But I think diplomats should have empathy for their opponents. Now, empathy is not sympathy, as the Brits say. That is something else. But to have empathy for your opponent is important because you have to understand the interest of your opponent. It's in your interest to understand what they really want. And I think when I look at ambassadors, skilled ambassadors, that's exactly what you see. They are so nice to you, they're so friendly, they seem to be so open, but if they don't want to give you anything, they won't give you an inch.
You know, I have been ambassador in Tunisia, the Arabic countries. And of course, Arabic countries should be with the Arabic world, Islam world, etc., etc. But Tunisia is a very European country, on the other hand. So they had a very good cooperation with the NATO organization. And when a NATO fleet visited Tunisia, it was always the Turkey ship who was the flagship, with the leader of the NATO fleet, not the American or the French, because it was the sensibility of that Tunisian state to have as visit a Turkish. Why not? You know, we were with Tunisia. We were in the same Ottoman Empire, Hungary and Tunisia, in the same time in the same empire. So for them, Turkish flagship. Perhaps for Hungary is not the same, but for Tunisia it was acceptable.
But the Netherlands and Hungary has also been in the same empire, isn't it?
For a short time.
No, quite a few centuries.
But only a part
Roman
of Hungary.
Empire.
A third of Hungary was part of the Ottoman
That's true.
Empire.
Above the Danube, it was the
but
barbarians.
You know, if I am in Tunisia, of course, we were in the same empire, same culture, etc. If the Prime Minister of Hungary is in Turkey, we Hungarian, we are a Turk state, and we are observator in the Turk State Council. So, you know, it's cultural sensibility. If it is very good for the Hungarian image, why not?
Just let me stick a little bit to that question of culture and diplomatic protocol, if you allow, because we have seen scenes where, for example, Erdogan was meeting Ursula von der Leyen, and she wasn't seated at the table where the big guys were sitting. And then again, we had visits from the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs to Afghanistan, and then again to Syria, where they didn't shake hands and didn't give any signs of diplomatic protocol that we are using. How do you see, do have only Western countries to accept some cultural rules, or do every countries have to stick to the same diplomatic rules that we try to implement?
I think that would be ideal, but we should not forget that protocol as we see it and as we apply it is a Western invention. So not the Chinese one. Chinese protocol is completely different. And so as the West has been dominant because of colonialism and so on, we think that this is self-evident, like international law, the law of the sea, for example, and therefore the others should behave like that. But this is according to our Western culture. So we are changing a lot of things at the moment, and I think this is also something where the global South should be involved in maybe changing, indeed, the diplomatic habits in that field.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of cases when diplomatic protocol rules are not observed. But, you know, as professional, I am seeking always for the message of that. I cannot believe in mistake. Even in this case, I think it was a message to women, to Europe. Turkey is waiting for the membership during more than 20 years. So it was a message to Europe. But they had the knowledge how to have 3 eagles seat. Some years before this event, Turkey, as a host of the G20's organization, organized the same meeting between the Turkish president and president of European Council and president of European Commission with 3 chairs. So after 2 to 3 years, I think it's not a mistake, but it was a message to Europe and to women also, because Erdogan left the Istanbul Convention. He created the Istanbul Convention in the framework of the Council of Europe. I have been there. So he created, for this season, it's named Istanbul Convention, to protect women. But after that, he left, and perhaps this is a message. But, you know, in the other hand, you can have a very creative solution about the diplomatic protocol. For example, in 2002, when it have been a NATO summit in Prague. And of course, the flags were in the alphabetic English order as normal. But for the partnership summit, they have a guest, a Ukrainian President Kuchma, who wasn't very PC from the American point of view, because they ordered to kill a journalist of opposition, Gongedze. And for this reason, General Bush had no intention to have on the same photo, you know, Ukraine, USA, UK, in the same photo, in the English order. So, in the end, the NATO protocol used the French order. Why not? There is 2 official languages.
They did the same
French
thing now
and
with
English. So
the Pope.
United States became États-Unis d'Amérique, UK became Royaume-Uni, R and E, and of course Turkey stayed next to Ukrainian president. And some years ago in a Baltic state, it was a new NATO summit with Ukrainian President Zelensky in the same English order. So Zelensky, Biden, and the British Prime Minister. So in the same photo, because protocol solved a political problem. So protocol can help the politic if you are very well knowing the protocol rule.
Well, at the funeral of the Pope, they used the French order, but there was one exception, that was Ukraine. They put Zelensky on the front row, notwithstanding the French order.
Yeah, if you mention this question, then maybe we can go to that very interesting topic of how can maybe some, I would say, new techniques or new ways of negotiations influence bilateral, multilateral settings, peace treaty, a ceasefire. Can it be reached easier in a bilateral way between the two, those who are involved into the conflict, or is there a need for someone from outside to help to reach that ceasefire and to move forward to a peace treaty in a conflict like we are seeing even in the Ukraine or in Gaza?
Well, negotiation is a process, but the process is in a context. And I think the context is important. And if the context is that party A and party B are completely opposed, then you need a mediator. But then even a mediator is not enough. If you look at Palestine and you look at the Israelis, that is really, if there is a negotiation, there's not really a negotiation now. That's what we call distributive negotiation, what Trump does as well, just to bulldoze them. The other side is integrative bilateral negotiation, a win-win outcome. Even Trump believes in a win-win outcome in the sense that he says, this means that I want to win twice and you should lose twice. Well, that's not our idea of win-win, I think. So if it's a really polarized situation, then often a multilateral setting is better. You have more actors, you have more power around. So it's very much a question of choosing the forum depending on the context of that moment. And the problem is, and that's the problem of negotiation, when will a negotiation be, let's say, as a kind of alternative, used as an alternative to war? And when will a negotiation end up with an agreement? These are the big questions. And these are the questions of Vladimir Putin and Zelensky at the moment, and the Israelis and the Palestinians, which I think is even more difficult to deal with, as because they are each other's mirror image, as a Canadian professor recently said. So how do you deal with that? When is a situation ripe for negotiation instead of warfare? And the sad thing is that according to theory, we say if the parties are exhausted, but then both parties must be exhausted. If only Ukraine is exhausted and the Russian Federation is not exhausted, then the war will go on. So you need more victims. You need more destruction before you can finally change weapons for words. And that is still where we stand, and I don't see that changing in the future. It's much more easy to start a war if you have a good army than to start a viable, substantial negotiation process, because negotiation is vulnerable. It's a process that has been protected, and I think that is the essence of the European Union. It protects the negotiation processes, therefore they will be quite effective, therefore we can use words instead of weapons. But even in the European Union, I think we might still define negotiation as war by peaceful means. It doesn't mean that we are nice to each other, but it does mean that we are fighting with words and no longer with weapons like in the past.
You know, dear student, I prepared my work, so my homework. I can say this quote of Shakespeare that though this be madness, yet there is a method in it. So I think perhaps the method of Trump is a bit strange, in Hungarian unorthodox. Yeah, we are knowing this meaning, but perhaps there is a huge impact to the international negotiations. You know, during the history, it was the same. A strong state attacked the weak state and had the intention to enlarge his power to the world. Not only to have Greenland and Canada and Panama, but all the world. And it was a very open intention of all empire, Ottoman, Roman, all Napoleon, all. If we are strong, we will attack the other. Only after the Second World War, when the big states had a role to have this image of win-win peace. And even the weak little state have a thought that, oh, I have a role in the world politics, not only the big states, but in the same time, these big winners, however, maintain their position in the Security Council, permanent member in the United Nations. So even it wasn't a very equal position. For example, Russia. He is not an aggressor because as member state of permanent member of Security Council will never prove that Russia had an aggression. So even on the basis of international law, Russia is not. Is it a normal thing? I am a strong country, member state of the Security Council, so I can do everything. I think it is the same thinking of way of Trump. But there is an obstacle if there is an other strong partner in the world, and there is an obligation to follow a win-win negotiation. So I have a positive thinking. I think that this big revolution of Trump style would have a good effect. For example, in Europe, as Russian aggression created Ukrainian state, Ukrainian nation, because before the aggression, Ukraine wasn't a real nation state. Nowadays, it's okay for them. Trump created European Union, European Defense Union. Trump returned UK to Europe as in the coalition of willing. UK left Europe in Brexit, but returned to protect Europe with Canada. who is elected, etc. Australia. There is an effect to the election in Canada or in Australia, a Trump effect.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in a way, Vladimir Putin created Ukraine even more than it was in the past. But let's not forget there was the Holodomor and the hunger. And so the Ukrainians have not a good memory of the Russians. And the traumas of the past often overshadow the present. And the difference, I think, with the past is that nowadays we are globalized. We all hang together. So if you are all hanging together, if you're all connected, and then you get a war, then you get these kind of things. Look at what happened in Spain and Portugal, but this was only an accident or whatever. Everything in the world is hanging together. So if these kind of things happen, it has a disastrous effect on the world as a whole. Well, in the past, if Genghis Khan wanted to conquer China or Central Asia or whatever, okay, it was terrible for Hungary as well with Béla, who had to get out of the hell out of it. But at least it was local. Now nothing is local anymore. Everything hangs together, and that is dangerous. Look at Pakistan, India now. These things are very dangerous because at the moment we might not control it anymore. And why do we have the European Union? I think we have the European Union because we had the First World War, we had the Second World War. We learned that if we don't work together, to get a disastrous situation. And we had the Soviet Union, because without the Soviet Union, the pressure of the Soviet Union, I think the European Union would never have integrated more than it did at the beginning. And these are very sad things that people know it's going wrong, know it won't work, but they still cannot do this. And to me, a very sad example is, for example, the First World War, and then at the end of the First World War, you get Trianon and so on. But then also, of course, they had to deal with the Germans. And then Clemenceau, the Prime Minister of France, said, I don't want the Germans at the table here in Paris, in Versailles, because 1 million of French and more than that died, so I cannot have them at the table. And he had a young assistant, Jean Monnet, one of the fathers of the European Union, but not at the time. And he said, Monsieur le Premier Ministre, if you don't have the Germans at the table, we will have another war in 20 years' time. And there it was, the other. We know about it. We know it. And we cannot stop it, and that is something that is, we should be able to handle it. I don't know how.
You mentioned this handshake in Afghanistan and even in Damascus. A handshake, please. This is the Trump style, and the Trump negotiation method. You know, a handshake and a photo in the same time, and for the world. Trump is a winner. I have won the handshake position, and the other, surprise, surprise, what has happened? So all the behavior, protocol behavior of Trump is the domination, as in the politics. In the protocol, it's the same thing.
And so what happened in Canada? The Liberals won. What happened in Austria? The Liberals won.
Yeah.
So Trump is creating his own enemies, his own opponents. I don't know if this will be successful in the long run. I think it won't.
But in Canada, excuse me, but when we had some days ago a negotiation between Trump and the new elected Canadian Prime Minister, and Canadian Prime Minister said, you wanted to have Canada, but you are in the state business. So real estate business. If in the real estate business there is some building, it's not to sale, for example, the Buckingham Palace or White House. So it is the same thing in Canada. I consulted the Canadian owners, Canadian electors, and they said Canada is not to sale. So if there is an opposition to Trump, they can have a deal. If there is no opposition, of course, you are a loser.
Inshallah.
I think we are a little bit losing our audience here right now. Stick with us. We still have on the clock 3-4 minutes. So I hope that those in uniform know that the class is over when the professor tells that the class is over. And we were very happy that you came. Thank you so much. But one last question to both of you. Do you see that there is a new emerging trend in international negotiations. Do we have to prepare ourselves to these new trends that can shape the future of diplomacy? And how can we do that?
I don't see a new trend. I see an old trend, a backlash, as you said, Mr. Ambassador, the old habit of trying to dominate the other party. Well, we learned that in negotiation, just to try to dominate the other party, that is not a solution, at least not a peaceful solution. So I think we are, in a way, on the retreat, and that we did better in the past than we are doing at the moment. And so I hope that this kind of strategy of domination will end up soon. And as far as Trump is concerned, till now, I think he has not been successful. There are a lot of words, there's a lot of drama, but he didn't get anything till now. And now he has a problem with China. You cannot dominate China. So I think this is a sad development. I think we did better in the past, and I hope we will get rid of this kind of distributive bargaining tactics as soon as possible in this interconnected world.
I think we sometimes the world should have a shock, a crisis, and after crisis, always the way of the politics of the international return on the same way. So I am optimistic that after this shock, it will be a bit clearer than before. The position of United States against the European Union, trade union or not, against China, and I think even the rule of negotiation will be a bit clearer than before. And for me, it's okay. Why not? You know, we can avoid always the PC, PC, and PC. Sometimes we should see the reality of the things, the force which are stronger than the other, etc., etc. So, you know, sometimes there is a crisis and the world is have an intention to change. For example, during the COVID, everybody said, okay, COVID, it will replace the online negotiation, will replace the personal negotiation. Never, never, never. So online is very good, as the same thing with, but not replacing the personal contact. Personal contact never can be replaced. It's the same thing with the artificial intelligence. Nowadays it's very in fashion to say that, oh, artificial intelligence will replace diplomats and the workers. No, never, never. During the history, the human being created machines and all skills and device to make easier the work. It is the same thing with this artificial intelligence. And after that, we will have a normal way of negotiation of the life after all this crisis.
As Johan Cruyff said, every disadvantage has an advantage.
So that's a very good last sentence to our panel discussion. Thank you, Professor Paul Meerts. Thank you, Ambassador Ferenc Robák. Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed.